Omnicom's strategy when it comes down to managing data is all about being data agnostic. We don't own any data per se. We partner up with a lot of data companies to make sure that we have the best in class or best in breed database for us to manage. The key point that we want to differentiate ourselves versus our competition as a holding company is to make sure that we don't mix church and state when it comes down to data purchase, data utility, and ultimately data management moving forward for our clients.
Couldn't agree more with that statement. I think it's really important that we put ourselves in the right front foot, effectively, to navigate this changing landscape of data. And I think that every client has different needs, and I think that we are well set and well kind of versed at providing the best in class response to modern advertising comms using data in the right way.
News. The management of the data is recently been kind of built on a platform we call Omni. Omni is a platform that aggregates all of our tools, all of our techniques, and all of our databases into one well of information. And it kind of allows all of Omnicom, especially Omnicom Media Group, to have that one version of the truth, that one harmonized database where the many different parameters of a consumer are reflected in unison. And I think that single ID language is very well needed nowadays when the versatility, especially in the Middle East and North Africa, the versatility of the media campaigns and the media investments go all the way to a much more e-commerce sophisticated approach, all the way to the spectrum of a relative analog, generic outdoor position.
Omnicom's point of difference when it comes to data and technology is bringing the best of everything that we do globally into the hands and the fingertips of planners. So it's a series of technologies and data partners and provision that comes together into one roof, into one UI, that supports advanced planning and innovation when it comes to the planning process, all the way from understanding a customer, for instance, a B2B audience, which is quite an unheard of thing to understand here. It's very difficult to find information on that. All the way to the online to offline. What are customers doing on their day-to-day? How do we create personas? How do we understand behaviors of customers as they traverse online to offline? All the way to the creative manifestations. How do we then plug those audiences into the right advertising copy and the tonality? And Omni supports that. It gives planners the guidelines and the guidance to make that happen and a reality. Obviously born out of the US, where our headquarters is, where we have the kind of hub of innovation change, effectively the R&D. Analect, effectively the data and technology kind of department, got together to effectively find as many unifying product streams that could come together into one roof, because I think that we were doing incredible work, different parts of the globe, that now we recognize that we can leverage as one company in terms of our global footprint. And that standardization, I think, is going to allow us to be really geared to deliver on this promise of Omni next year. But it's an iterative thing.
Yeah.
I think it's not it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. I think I'm part of that global consortium, and I work very closely with the executive leadership team across the globe to make sure that we're taking what they've done and giving them what we've done.
We as Omnicom Media Group, but specifically the heritage that we have through OMD and PhD, have launched lots of tools, lots of techniques in the recent past, whether it was partnerships with external third-party tool developers or internally created and housed. Omni is a byproduct of our heritage. It's a byproduct of the fact that the three most creative agencies, most of the world's creative agencies are within our partnership agreement and a holding company. Naturally, we have a very dedicated global team who source the very best-in-class information for our market, effectively to be compliant with GDPR, to make sure that we are future fit with the best in audience planning for 2020. So obviously we leverage that as much as physically possible. Now beyond that space, we're lucky that we're in the Middle East.
And the Middle East has a lot of innovation, startups, small companies that are innovating on a daily basis. And I think it's our prerogative and our kind of our MO to be able to tap into these environments and the skill set that the Middle East effectively harnesses. And I think that's something that we try and balance. You know, that global conversation, but also the regional one. I think we need to remain as neutral, bringing all of this in-house.
The platform has always been that the global teams source global partnerships. And they identify these things because ultimately the majority of the data we use are across the 6-7 key sectors, right? Whether it's CPG or telco or tech or retail so those are the databases that are well known worldwide. We took 2017 as a year to understand exactly what made sense for publishing, for listening, for assessing, for dashboarding, and ultimately for understanding how creative needs to be served up. I think that's a point that Andreas made, which for me, I should double tap on, because the beauty of Omni isn't only just putting everything in one place, because that's relatively easy. It's putting everything in one place with a utility towards advertising and media investment. And that's the point of differentiation that I think is well recognized. Our mantra at Omnicom Media Group is to be client first, brand led, and group powered. So I'll give you the long form of those three answers. Group powered is basically where Analect lives. So Analect is a group powered function that makes sure that the brand led discussions are basically empowering OMD, PhD, and Hearts and Science. And the beauty about making sure that Analect is powering those three agencies is that you get the best of breed also, not in terms of sourcing the data only, but in terms of sector knowledge and in terms of region and market knowledge. And ultimately, the decision remains at the agency based on the client's goals and objectives. The key message that I wanted to convey is that it's not only about someone doing the data and then handing it over to someone else to activate against it. It's very much a meshed process. Accountability and responsibility becomes much more finite. So the accountability is on Andreas to make sure that Omni works, that the data output works. The outcome of where that translates to a media investment is the responsibility of the agency. And I think as long as you're clear on who's accountable for what and who's responsible for what, obviously there's less chagrin when it comes down to ownership of the data, ownership of the process. It becomes much more fluid.
In terms of ownership, of course, I think Analect look after and maintain that infrastructure and that communication flow. But it's very much down to the agencies and to planners and client leads understanding what clients need and making sure that iterates back into the product and how it progresses. We are an outfit of 12, split across 3 disciplines effectively. We have an engineering outfit who are fully versed at all back-end technologies and software development. We have a discovery team who are effectively marketing science consortium of experts around querying data, analyzing data, statisticians, econometrics experts, all the clever bots, effectively, that interpret data into something that's tangible for clients. And then we have our kind of what we describe as a futures team, which is our kind of product solutions department, who are there to innovate and there to help clients with really interesting questions, especially in this day and age around chatbots and CRM integration and natural language processing. So those guys are also incredibly smart and dedicated to their cause, but I think can produce things that are game-changing and put us in a different perspective to what we used to be.
In terms of our structure and in terms of how we've been staffing up, I think we've had a race to arms when it came down to technology and data in the past 3 years at least, if not before that. But that race to arms wasn't matched with a race to talent. So we've all built our tech stack on one hand, but we haven't really focused on the talent stack. Luckily enough, again, with a fantastic culture and fantastic talent pool within the building, it was just a matter of rejigging certain things, adjustability, rather than breaking things down and rebuilding them up. But today, we're proud to have a talent stack that can match the tech stack. 5 years ago, the teams for each account would be 100% media folks. Today, I would say 60% would be media folks or media background, integrated media background, so we don't have digital folks specifically, because I think that's an old word in an old world, and digital is an infrastructure, no longer a discipline. And then 40% of the folks within a certain account team are those analysts, those creative technologists, or other folks that make sure that we amplify the investments of the media. The way data has been transforming the agency is very much from the top down. The MD for OMD UAE started off as digital planner. The MD for PhD UAE started off as a digital planner. And the GM for Hearts and Science UAE is equally based on digital integrated, including events actually, for that matter, and social media. All that was under his run at some point in time. That's how you have to transform. It's changing everything, and it's making us have to be structured almost every 9 to 12 months. And I don't think our employees, or our clients for that matter, will blame us for restructuring this frequently. I remember in 2014 when we did the first major restructure at OMD, I had to call up a couple of clients, send them a couple of emails, kind of present them with the solution that we thought was important. The next time we restructured, we didn't have to inform anybody. It's expected of us. And I think that's how much data is changing. And in 6 months' time, what we're building today will be probably 50% obsolete. And that's where the resilience of the engineering team that Andreas has within Amelec has to be more resilient than potentially skillful. I keep talking about resilience because you are building things that have a timestamp. You're not building something that's eternal. And I think that's the millennial mindset that has to work upwards towards our leadership. It's a millennial mindset that has to be built towards our partners and our clients, because that's the majority of our consumers today in the region. When the majority of the consumers are under the age of 30, you need to act like you're able to talk to these folks. Since Andreas has been here, moving from the UK 6 months ago, Amelec has a refreshment around it. There's a revitalization around that particular entity within the group. But across the group, you need to have it, and I think it's if you're comfortable with the status quo, then you will be getting status quo results, and that's what I fear. My biggest fear is stagnant. My biggest ambition is movement, and if you have that as kind of your ultimate drive, then change is the only thing you need to catalyze.
You get value from people that have expertise, skill sets, training, academic background, but the thing that differentiates us is values, and I think that's about empathy. It's about a common standing, a human standing, and appreciation. And we're very fortunate in this globalized city that we live in here in Dubai to be able to tap into a wealth of expertise and that human focus that I think as at Omnicom puts us above and beyond in terms of our competitive advantage. And I think when we're looking for skilling up in 2020 and beyond, I think we also need to look beyond academics, book smarts, and start thinking about people that have experiences in their own life and their own storytelling that they can bring into our strategies, into our clients' way of thinking.
And in the future, it's going to get even more important because that's the element that is hard to AI, to lean on machines to replace. Harmonizing data, sourcing of data, updating the database, APIs, all the other stuff, machines will eventually do it for us. But the empathy part, which Andreas mentions, and the soft skills, I think that's something that will remain a human element until the foreseeable future. Maybe my children's tasks and jobs will be different, but at least in my lifetime, I think that's something we should focus on. And I'm a very pragmatic person, and the company is super pragmatic in terms of our approach. So until we see a pragmatic application of AI, ML, blockchain, we're going to focus on what we know we can automate, what we know we can, what redundancies we can be more efficient at, but also lean on and lean forward heavily on the talent that we have, to make sure that we're able to maximize the tech stack that we manage. The magic of creativity and the machine of media are never more overlapped in the recent past. The key thing is for us to recruit analysts who are able to synthesize the data for a human analysis, and to recruit creative folks who are not intimidated by data, to inform their creativity, to fuel their creativity, to catalyze their creativity. But also, let's not limit them and tell them that they have to abide by what the data tells them. It should be a springboard, it should be an inspirational point, and then they should do what their creativity flourishes, and they develop the right creative tone that's needed for each campaign.
Success comes in all shapes and sizes. I think we need to think of it as an internal exercise about adoption, about utilization, about the common language, I think, as a starting point. I think we also need to think about the application, the use cases. This is what's exciting about it. This storytelling opportunity is a KPI for me and for a client, I think, to be able to show that innovation curve and being part of that journey in the market. And lastly, is business impact, tangible sales results, growth, equity, share of market. Traditional marketing KPIs, but I think just as important as they ever were.
Important one from a managerial point of view is utilization of Omni. I think we're in the top 5 for companies in Africa. So in terms of office using Omni, in terms of propensity and frequency, that is going to trickle down to the office leaders, the agency leaders, the directors, and it will be part of the goals and objectives, the GNOs of each individual that has some role to touch an Omni. The appetite for the clients and their capacity to understand the utility of the data has been great in the past years. I think it has been much more in the recent past than before, just because of the complexity of the world. 5 years ago, the majority of data came from Google and Facebook, and those are walled gardens. That said, they've now been much more of a receptive partner, both in terms of the data they share, but the utility of that data that we can reinvest back into their platform. 5 years ago, we talked to the marketing department. Today, we have discussions with the CRM team, with the IT team, with the business owners, with the sales folks, with the ordering folks when it comes down to retail, automotive, for example, along with the marketing team. So that audience expansion is a number one KPI for me when it comes down to how receptive folks have been in terms of data.
We've had some phenomenal use cases across the GCC, from Iraq to Egypt to here in Dubai. Variant cases of clients trying to understand A, where best to spend their money in the offline space, B, the behaviors of customers as they traverse the online and offline worlds, and understanding who they are, what they're doing, how often do they go to specific environments, and what's their makeup. And also business intelligence, and I think that's actually the most interesting component, is how we are moving away from a typical media conversation into actually the business context. And the data that my team manipulate and advise on goes beyond the realm of GRPs and KPIs in the traditional sense, but into a world of what store should I open? How many customers are coming in? What do they look like? What are they doing? How are they interacting with our exhibitions and with our experiences?
We've used outdoor data and mobile data to inform our investments when it comes down to outdoor. Different formats, different routes, and different utilities of the investments. So that's an example that you took an analog world and you kind of overlaid it with a mobile data overmap, if you will. Then we've also taken actual data from traffic management to optimize e-commerce traction and transactions without hindering in-store retail numbers. That was a challenge that I thought we would never be able to do. And when we got briefed in April for this particular brand, I thought it was a very tall order because they didn't want any erosion. Usually when you grow e-commerce, it's at the expense of retail. The third example I'll give you is that there's a big disconnect between what consumers see online for automotive brands, what they see in the streets, whether it's the car itself or the billboard of a car, and ultimately when they actually walk into a showroom. That they haven't even purchased a car yet. So we've actually been much more finite when it comes down to data management and enticing both the dealers and the corporate world of the automotive brands to unite their data together, which sometimes is a bit alien to them. And there's a bit of protection happening around data. Our recommendation was, make that happen for us to make sure that we're able to take the best decisions to track that consumer.
I'm wholly confident in Omnicom's position on GDPR at a global level. The amount of work that goes into the procurement of data sets to ensure that compliance is huge. I mean, it starts all the way from the very top. And we do the very, very best we can in order to make sure that we maintain those standards on a global basis and also understand the effect of GDPR, not just obviously commenced in Europe, now with the immersion of the California Data Act, and I think as it seeps through into the Middle East and across the globe, we need to be able to translate those principles into helping our clients navigate that space.
Going back to how do we procure data, we don't own any data. That on its own saves us a lot of GDPR headache. And ultimately, the data we use for each client and for each account is specific to that account.